immediately I set about inventing the coffee roasting machine. So it took 2 years. We opened our doors with that machine that you noted correctly, Kurt, the Beanmaster 5000,
Yes.
in 2009. We're in business to employ men and women who have been to prison. When I go on vacation, my entire company is in the hands of people who have been to prison.
Hello, and welcome to the Liberty Spenders podcast. We are Kurt and Kristen Luidhardt, your hosts, and co-founders of the Prosper Group, an agency that's raised over $500 million and helped elect over 100 members of Congress, 14 governors, 15 U.S. senators, and 1 president. And now, in addition to helping political candidates get elected, we are helping your business get elected by answering this question: what if you could exponentially grow your business by tapping into a unique audience that we call Liberty Spenders? Now, Liberty Spenders are politically conservative or faith-based consumers. They make up roughly 40% of the country, and they're looking to buy from businesses and brands that align with their values.
Pete Leonard founded I Have a Bean Coffee in 2007 and built the innovative Beanmaster 5000 roasting system used by the company through 2020. And Pete has contributed much to the art of coffee roasting, which we're going to get deep into today. But the uniqueness of I Have a Bean lies not just in its quality product, but in its purpose. Pete established the company with dual objectives: to roast the finest coffee beans available and also elevate the public perception of post-prison people. So I Have a Bean provides a meaningful employment opportunity to men and women with felony convictions, in addition to wonderful coffee. But before that, Pete had founded 2 other businesses, so he's been a longtime entrepreneur. We are excited to have you on, Pete. Welcome to the Liberty Spenders podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Kurt and Kristen. It's great to be here with you guys.
Really excited to be chatting with you, Pete. Your story is so incredible, and can't wait to dig into that for our listeners.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Thank you. I remember you telling your story about visiting Brazil, getting inspired by what you saw there, and eventually coming home and building your own coffee roasting machine. So you got to tell me about how all that came together, because it sounds fascinating.
Okay, I will. I will also confess that in that process, my wife referred to me as the coffee wacko.
Well, we have all kinds of fun names for our spouses and loved ones. Yeah. It's all in love, I'm sure.
Oh, it was. She had a big smile on her face, but she did that because, so let me just back up real quick. I went to Brazil. I was part of a mission trip, a short-term missions trip with our church. We supported some missionaries down there in a little town called Londrina. And I was a coffee drinker before I went down there. I've been a coffee lover since I was 9, when I had my first cup of coffee in the basement of a church in Dallas, Texas.
Wow.
Yeah, well, my mom, we were visiting a bunch of different churches, and she was trying to help us understand that there are all different faiths. And this happened to be a Catholic church that we were visiting, if my memory serves correct. And, they had a percolator in the basement and little 8-ounce styrofoam cups in a stack. And she had gotten a cup of this coffee, and I asked her if I could have some. She looked at me like, sure, go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll like that. Sure, knock yourself out.
I'm sure you'll love it, son. And so I went over and I put a little coffee in that cup. I mean, a little coffee, and I put a lot of cream and a lot of sugar in there and stirred it up. And I came back and sat down, and she's looking at me expectantly. And I took a sip of that, and I'm like, that's pretty good. I took another sip. She reached right out and grabbed the cup. She said, nope, you're too young. You're not doing that.
Already you're cut off, Pete. You're cut off.
Yeah, cut off. Right. Exactly right. She didn't want to see that. So I'm in Brazil on this short-term missions trip, and we had been drinking coffee. There were about 10 or 12 men that I was on this trip with. We were pouring cement in the foundation to build the foundation of a wing of a church. And they were serving the poor in that community. And we were building the Sunday school wing because the kids were meeting outside. So it didn't matter if it was torrential rain or whatever. They were outside under literally a cowshed trying to hold Sunday school. So we were fixing that problem. And we were being served coffee every morning by this young lady who didn't speak any English at all, only Portuguese. And through some hand gestures and translation by the missionaries with us, we learned that the coffee we were drinking was so good. Her father was growing and harvesting that coffee. It came from her family's farm. And it was just down the road, about 20 miles. So we took a trip down there, visited the plantation, I saw coffee trees for the first time. Now I'm 40 years old when this is happening. Okay. Long time between 9 and 40.
Yeah.
Right. So we saw the trees growing, and I saw coffee cherries and saw him roasting coffee at a stainless steel sphere about the size of a soccer ball. And there was a wire going through it, and it was a handle that was bent, sort of offset, so that he could rotate the sphere over a fire. His wife was feeding sticks into the fire, branches to keep the flames up. And inside this sphere are green coffee beans, raw green coffee beans, and he's roasting them. Now, until I saw that, it never occurred to me that a human being did such a thing as roast coffee beans. I had no idea where coffee came from before that. None.
Yeah, it doesn't come out of a...
like,
yeah.
No. Well, that's what I thought, right? I mean, I wasn't concerned with it. I mean, literally, I was a major national chain drinker at the time, not real coffee. It was a foo-foo drink, what we call it today, called a mocha. So I don't know if you know what that is, but it's a shot of espresso. Okay, so it's actually a delicious drink. It's a shot of espresso, some chocolate syrup, and steamed milk, all put together. So it's a mocha latte is the full name for it. And it was a delicious drink. That's all I had been drinking up to that point. And then I had this guy's coffee in Brazil, and it was just straight black coffee, and it was delicious. And we drank that, and I liked it so much. In fact, we all liked it, that we bought pounds and pounds of this guy's roasted coffee beans. I think I bought 10 pounds. Well, I mean, it was my intent was to bring it back to the States and then divide it up and give it as gifts to the people that paid money to send me on that trip. Right? It's what you do. Right. I bought 10 pounds. I drank 8 of them before I had a chance to give them away. Yep. So that was not good. But I gave away the last kilo, 2.2 pounds. And then I thought, what am I going to do now? Because I've been drinking this wonderful coffee. I went back to the corner coffee shop, and instead of ordering a mocha, I'm on my way to work, I ordered a black coffee. Now, I had been a regular customer. The baristas knew me well. Pete, a straight coffee, just black coffee, not a mocha? Nope, I'm done with mochas. I'm drinking a straight black coffee. And she looked at me with her kind of a raised eyebrow, like, okay. And she poured the coffee, handed it to me, just a short one. I got in the car, started the car. I took a sip of this coffee. I could not roll my window down fast enough to spit that stuff out. It was disgusting tasting compared to what I had been drinking. And so that really started my odyssey of becoming the coffee wacko, where I turned my grill, my Weber gas grill, into a coffee roasting machine and taught myself how to roast coffee in my backyard. And I did that every Saturday morning for months. So I could still take it apart and we could grill chicken and all that kind of stuff. But really, that was my start of roasting coffee. I didn't have any plans to start a business. I already had a business. I was running a small software company. We needed programmers and that kind of thing. So that was my day job. My side hustle, now that's what we call it, right? My side hustle was roasting coffee. And I remember one particular Saturday, I'm out there roasting coffee. So roasting coffee is not a silent thing. Coffee beans, when they're roasted, they heat up and they crack and pop and smoke. And it doesn't smell like coffee. If you've ever smelled coffee roasting, some people describe it like toast, maybe burning toast, depending on how dark you're getting, that kind of thing. It's a unique smell. And I'm roasting coffee. My grill is going, smoke is coming out of the grill, right? And a neighbor named John is walking up my driveway. He's kind of looking with his nose up in the air. He calls up to me, hey, Leonard, what are you doing? It smells like coffee. I said, John, I'm roasting coffee. What? So I offered some coffee to John, and I said, listen, I think this is pretty good. Do me a favor, will you? I'll give you some coffee. You tell me for real. I want you to be honest. Is it good or not? Now, I had no plans for starting a business. I was just sating my own desire for good coffee, right? And he said, yep, no problem. So I gave him a pound of coffee, and I saw him. He came over the following Wednesday. And I said, so what'd you think? He said, well, you roasted it on Saturday. I had some that day. It was okay. I mean, I could drink it. Saturday or Sunday, it was tasting a little over roasted to me. Monday, he said by Monday, I couldn't drink it anymore. It was really over roasted. You can do better than that.
Now, forgive the interruption, but did you know your neighbor was like a coffee aficionado? Was he the right person to give you feedback? Did you think about that? Or was it more of just, hey, here's somebody I know and let's get his opinion? And I ask because we all know how valuable it is to get feedback, and you want to get feedback from the right people as much as you can do that, where you're really valuing what they have to share.
You do need to value, find the right people for feedback. That's a great point. John happened to be a good person for feedback. What I didn't know, and John told me at this exact moment, he said, Pete, I was a missionary kid. I grew up in Kenya, and we roasted coffee all the time. And we did it over an open fire. It was a little bit more rudimentary than what you've got here, but not a lot. And I know Kenyan coffee, and you told me this is Kenyan coffee, and this is not what it's supposed to taste like. So he told me what it was supposed to taste like, and he couldn't really coach me on the roasting part, because roasting over a fire in a wok, stirring with a stick, that's you don't have a lot of control that way, right? But he knew it was too dark. So I tried again, and every Saturday for the next number of months, John came into my driveway. I gave him a pound of coffee. Wednesday, I'd get feedback. And it started as some criticism, which you heard. And after a couple of weeks, it turned into critique. This is getting better. I can taste the lemon notes that are supposed to be here. It's got nice acidity.
Okay.
But you're still lacking a little bit in body and development. You need to extend the time after first is going through this stuff. And then after critique, I started getting compliments. Pete, this is tasting pretty good. I'm liking what you're doing. You're coming a long way. And then, so I thought I've arrived. And then the following
and you
Saturday,
got feedback from an appropriate person. I mean, anyone who's
clearly
using feedback like body and lemon notes, and this person, has an opinion. And
I didn't really know, right? I'm just getting into coffee roasting. I really had no idea what he was talking about, but I was learning. And then one Saturday, I roasted coffee, and John did not show up in my driveway. I'm like, well, I'll roast it anyway, and I'll take it across the street to him. And I did. I bagged it up, and I took the pound of coffee across the street. As I'm approaching his house, his wife, Brenda, comes out of the house. She's walking down the steps, or front steps, and she's got her hand out like this. I've got my hand out like this, holding a bag of coffee, and she is pushing me back. Like, Brenda, I didn't see John today, so I thought I'd bring coffee over. And she's like, yeah, I know. Pete, we can't take your coffee from you anymore. I'm like, did I poison John? Is that why he's not
right? Something happened.
No. Yes, something happened. She's like, no. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase. We can't take your coffee from you anymore. We love your coffee, and we want you to keep going. So can we buy it from you?
Love that. That's amazing.
Okay. Right. That sounds like a great idea.
Right.
Then she said, so how much? $10. How's $10? She said, okay, I'll take two. Right. So haven't done any study on cost and any of that stuff. Right. It was just a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
So she went in the house and she got a $20 bill, and she came back. She said, I'll take two. And then she took the second bag next door to her neighbor. Now remember, roasting coffee smells like burning toast. Her neighbor thought that Brenda every Saturday at 10:30 in the morning was burning toast because the smell just wafted through the neighborhood. And she took it to her and said, here is what has been producing the smell. Pete is roasting coffee. And the next week they were both in my driveway with $10 bills. And it just started into a little side business from there. So that's really how I got my start in coffee roasting.
Yeah, well, that's quite the story.
Yeah. Well, and it's often the best way, right? You iterated a product until it was just perfect and you were doing it for the fun of it, which makes it far more exciting to turn into a real life career, you know? And so it's a great way to get started, right?
Oh, absolutely. And you're enjoying the process, and it's something that
Loving
you're passionate about. We talk about that a lot, but this was more than just a hobby. This was a passion. Maybe you wouldn't have called it an obsession, but you were definitely passionate about the results.
Yeah. We'd be in a self-described coffee wacko. So what would you,
exactly right.
You know, I am, you're talking, Kristen pointed this out too. Your neighbor's talking about lemon notes, talking about the length of time to roast. What makes, so if I'm going to the retailers and I'm buying, you know, coffee off the shelf, or I'm going to I Have a Bean Coffee and getting your best mix, what makes one taste better than the other? What's the defining characteristic? Is it where you source the beans? Is it, obviously there's some roasting, right, that technique that is employed, but what makes one better than the other?
That is a potentially very long answer question.
I was thinking that as he was asking, and I thought, well, you asked 10 experts, they're going to say something different.
Well, sure. Right. I mean, maybe you have to give the answer for the uninitiated, perhaps.
That's okay. I love talking about this stuff, and cut me off whenever it gets too long. I will try and be succinct here, right? So there are a number of factors that go into coffee quality. First, let me say coffee beans are graded by independent experts called, it's by the the Coffee Quality Institute. And these people are certified, their palates are certified to taste coffee and evaluate the characteristics that a good coffee should have.
Sounds like a fun job.
Well, wow.
It is if you like coffee, right? Now, the reason this happens is because coffee farmers grow coffee cherry, and they are in business to sell that coffee cherry, and they need to sell it for more than what it costs to grow it, obviously, right? If you're in business, you're for profit, this is what you do. What you may not know is most coffee farmers don't drink coffee. They have no way of evaluating their own product to determine its value. That is often determined by somebody else in the supply chain. And usually that person or entity also has no way of valuing that coffee from a quality standpoint. So most farmers sell coffee cherry to a mill. So coffee is a seed, a split seed inside a coffee cherry. And what you have to do with that cherry is get the meat, skin and meat and parchment off of that seed, and then dry that seed to a certain level so that a roaster like me can put those green coffee seeds in a roasting machine and roast them. But a farmer is not selling the seed, they're selling the cherry. So they sell the cherry and they sell it by weight only. So a basket weighs, let's say 50 pounds. For every 50 pounds of cherry, the farmer gets X number of dollars or pesos or whatever currency they're in. And that's all they do. So the mill then, who's bought the cherry, processes it, and they have seeds. And then somebody comes along who's an evaluator and says, hey, we'll give you $2.40 for 100,000 pounds of these seeds. We'll give you $2.40 per pound or per kilo is usually how that's done. And they'll strike a deal and then export it, and I import it, and I don't import it. I evaluate it when it comes from an importer, and I'm often so every coffee we get in, we have to evaluate, right? The importer is in business to sell green coffee. We're in business to sell great green coffee. So, right. So we have to evaluate that coffee. We roast it in very small batches and we taste it. We do the same job the CQI person does at the farm in Brazil or Colombia or Guatemala or Ethiopia or any of the other 80 plus coffee growing countries that there are. And we determine a couple things. So there's a number of things that we're looking for. And so we're getting to quality here. Coffee, our coffee should be sweet. First of all, it needs to be sweet. There's sugar inside coffee beans. And the more sugar, the better that coffee tastes when it's roasted. So we're looking for sweetness and we're looking for acidity. Now you might think acidity, doesn't that mean bitter? No. Beer has acidity. Is it bitter? Well, sometimes it's got a bitter note to it, right? You get an IPA, a hazy IPA or whatever. It's got a bitter note, but it's got a sweet note and it's got acidity that makes it be alive on your tongue, right? The same is true of pop. You do not want flat beer and you don't want flat pop. You don't want flat coffee, right? Coffee without acidity is flat. So you want some acidity and it supports the sweetness that's there. Now, the sweetness presents itself in any number of ways. In Ethiopian coffee that we just released last week, it presents sweetness in an enormous bouquet of fruit. So there is cherry flavor in there. It's not flavoring. God put organic acids in that coffee cherry that taste to you like a cherry taste, because it's actually the same exact organic acids that are in a cherry can be in a coffee bean. Same ones for citrus, could be grapefruit, could be orange, could be lemon. Those same organic acids are in there, so they taste the same to your tongue, right? A great coffee has a lot of those. If it's in Ethiopia, you want a lot of fruit, a whole lot of that. If it's in Colombia, you want chocolate and caramel and nut. If it's in Brazil, you want caramel and peanut and that kind of thing. So different countries have different profiles for that. So we taste
and that makes sense, which is why when you see coffee marketed, those things are displayed, because anyone who is really into coffee would understand what to expect or what they're known for.
Well, now I know, because until 2 seconds ago, I didn't know Colombia coffee and Ethiopia coffee had different notes to it.
Unfortunately for you, Pete, for anyone listening, Kurt and I we would describe ourselves as you described yourself, Pete, years ago, which is that we are not aficionados at all. So
yeah,
this is a great...
we can change that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know we got to get some I have a bean here. I do drink coffee though. But I'm drinking it black because I have long since concluded that no coffee tastes great. So I'm clearly not drinking the right coffee with the right kind of fruit notes to it. That sounds good.
Or caramel or chocolate and it's a combination of flavors that can be in there. So yeah, and we evaluate those, we measure them, intensity, how much, are they in the right proportions, that sort of thing, and assign a score to the coffee. That's a 0 to 100 scale, and it's logarithmic, not exponential, right? Logarithmic. So what does that mean? You move a long ways this way to move a very short distance this way in quality, right? Yeah. It doesn't go up very far. You have to move a long ways to get this to go up a little bit. So we only choose coffee that scores in the top 1% of all the coffee in the world. Now, we can't buy all of that coffee, but the coffee we buy scores an 87 or higher on that scale, and that puts it in the top 1%. So,
okay, so I've learned the steps here that are involved, right? From the importer to what you guys do and the choices that you're making and how you're going to make sure you have excellence in your coffee. So I don't want to cut off your process, but I wanted to understand you've helped listeners now appreciate the depth to which you are, the steps that you're taking to make sure it is an excellent product. But I
Right.
really want to understand a little bit more about what motivated you on your social mission, because that's where these things combine, and why we're so excited to chat with you is not only this decision to make an excellent product, top quality, which is important for any business, but your social mission that's attached to that, which people will find fascinating.
Yeah. So social mission, how did that start? At the time that I was roasting coffee in my grill, I had a side business. My side business was coffee. I had a real business, right? that I was paying my bills with. And that business was technology oriented. I was writing software for the medical industry. It was encryption and decryption of doctors' notes, HIPAA compliance, and that sort of thing. And it was at that time that I came home from work one day, as I normally do, and played with the kids, helped with homework, although I'm not sure how helpful I was with the homework part. But I tried to do my duty there, and had family dinner, story time with the kids, and then my job is putting them to bed. I'm supposed to be calming them down, but they often got a lot more riled up when Dad is doing that work.
Right.
Right. And then I sat down to watch TV with my wife, watch the news, 10 o'clock news. And the lead story that particular night was her brother, who had been arrested. He was out of state. He was in Michigan, actually, so near you guys. And he was lead story, had been arrested and was in jail. And that was a kick in the gut to us, quite a shock. We had no inkling that there was anything he could do, would think about doing that would get him arrested, but he did. And he posted bail and got out of jail when the story ran, and it was on Channel 7 here in Chicagoland, ABC. He got fired from the job that he had. Now, this is the way I say it, right? He wasn't your ordinary arrestee. He had 147 IQ, which is Mensa level genius. He's a database engineer, a programmer, a mathematician, an accountant, and he was doing accounting work for a pretty large company. And he got fired when that story ran. Now, that was both a blessing and a curse. The curse, obviously, you lose your job, you lose your income. The great part about it is my technology company, tiny little company, was bidding on a software project out of Switzerland. And it was a $10 billion corporation that we had software we had invented that could solve a problem for them. And I knew if we won the bid, I would have to figure out how to actually do the work that I said that we could do, right?
It always helps when you can do that.
Yeah, it does. Right. But you aspire to be able to do something that's bigger than you, bigger than what you're doing now. And if we get it, then we'll figure out how to do it. Right. And that's been my mantra all along.
Right.
So we won the bid, and now I had to figure out, okay, how are we going to do this? My brother-in-law came on the market at that moment because he had been fired from his job, and he just so happened, and I'm going to put that in air quotes, to have exactly the skill set that I needed to supply the software, to write the software for this project in Switzerland. So I hired him immediately. He needed to work. I needed him. I had known him for 20, 25 years by this time. He was out of jail, hadn't been convicted of anything. And so we wrote software. It took a year for us to write the software, deliver it. We made money on it, delivered it on time, under budget, those kind of things. It took a year for him to go to trial, and he was convicted, and he was taken away and put in prison. I had to hire 4 other programmers to replace him.
Wow.
He was that good. of a programmer. So he was in prison for 9 months. I'll say 9 months. I don't remember how long it really was, and I will tell you why. I didn't know how important this event was, him getting arrested and going to prison. I knew it was going to change his life forever. I didn't understand that it was also going to change my life dramatically, his arrest and conviction. So, and I'll explain this real quick, right? He went to prison. When he got out 9 months later, I brought him right back to the company. He still had the skill set that I needed, right? We're still in business doing this stuff. And I was using an outside payroll processing company, right? I'm in business to write software. I'm not in business to enter hours and figure taxes and all that, right? You hire people to do that stuff. So it gets done right. That's the last person you want doing your taxes is me. So I ran payroll, and the first payroll that we ran with him on it, I got a call from the president of that company. And he said, hey, Pete, we just ran your payroll. Listen, something came up that we think you're going to want to know. You have a convicted felon on your payroll. What? I do? I had no idea. And he says, yeah, I knew you were going to want to know. I said, Jeff, I know. And he's like, what? You can't do that, Pete. I'm like, what do you mean I can't do that, Jeff? I own this company. I'm pretty sure I can hire anybody I want to. He said, you do own the company. No, you cannot do anything, hire anybody you want to, because we don't just process your payroll. We also hold your business insurance and your company's health insurance. And your health insurance is under a plan called a PEO. And so you're paying insurance rates for your 5 employees as if you had 10,000 employees. That's why your rates are really low, because your employees, he says, they're not yours, they're mine.
Yeah,
right.
My employees of record.
Yep, your co-employers.
Right? Mm-hmm. That's right. And so he said, and we don't hire felons. He's got to go. I said, well, he can't go because he's not just some felon I picked up off the street. This is my brother-in-law.
Right.
And I'm not going to go home tonight, right? And my wife's going to say, so honey, how was work today? Oh, it was great. I fired your brother and we, wrote some software. Yeah. I was not looking forward to that. He said, Pete, I don't care if he's the Pope. If he's not gone by the end of the day, we are going to not just not process your payroll. We are going to drop your business insurance. We will drop your health insurance. And if we do those 3 things, no one else in this industry is going to pick you up. Okay, that sounds pretty serious. He said, Pete, you're out of business if you do not do this. That's how serious it is. Okay, well, I don't want to be out of business. So I called my brother-in-law in the office. I explained things. We came up with a plan. I called Jeff. I said, okay, take him off payroll. He's been fired. And then my brother-in-law executed the plan. He went to the state of Illinois, filed some papers, and formed his own corporation. And my company contracted with his company to do some programming work. So, right. So where there's a will, there's a way. I got around that issue, right? But here's what was really going on. And this is my belief. God's tapping me on the shoulder saying, Pete, there is a problem here that I need you to pay attention to and do something about. And I was hearing, there's a problem with society, and man, that's too bad. Somebody should do something about that. Yep. I started having breakfast with a friend of mine who was doing bookkeeping for a local ministry called Koinonia House. They're a halfway house for people getting out of prison, men coming out of prison. They bring them into a home. They counsel them. They give them biblical counseling and guidance. They give them job skills, interview skills, help them understand how to integrate into society. And then they're there for 8 or 9 months, and then off they go, and another person or set of people come in. That's what Koinonia House does. Dave and I started having breakfast and started talking about Koinonia House and the men going through there. And one Friday I asked him, so what's the biggest problem these guys have? I mean, they're getting job skills training, they're getting counseling, they're learning how to use a computer, that kind of thing. And he looks at me like, have you not been paying attention? They can't get work. People won't hire them. I said, somebody should do something about that. He said, yeah, what do you have in mind? I'm like, well, I tell you what, if maybe if they can't find work somewhere else, what if they had their own company and employed themselves? Okay, he says, what would that look like? Well, I'm at home roasting coffee in my grill, and I'm making money on the side. My neighbors are buying my coffee, and I'm making a tidy little profit. How about we buy a grill for the guys at the Koinonia House in Wheaton, Illinois, teach them how to roast coffee, and they'll learn. We'll teach them how to do business administration, sales, marketing, delivery, that sort of thing, right? We'll teach them to do their own business.
Because the training is needed too. It's even if you want to hire these folks and give them opportunities, there's going to be training involved. And so there's got to be a place for that.
Always. And so he thought, okay, well, that sounds like it might have legs. Maybe we should write a business plan and see if this will really work. Okay, I've done that a few times. Let's write a business plan. And so we started down that path. We probably wrote 20 business plans, trying to figure out how to make this work. And there were some problems that we discovered, right? So one is it takes 2 years to learn how to roast coffee properly. You don't just get coffee beans brown and then they're roasted. There's a science to it, which I was learning in my grill. And I realized I did not have a level of roasting control that I needed to make perfect coffee every time, right? It was a manual process. And I remember one particular batch of Kenyan coffee that was fantastic. Nothing I had roasted tasted like this batch. And I was doing a diligent job of recording. I had the knobs turned up to medium high for the first 4 minutes. And then I turned them down for the next 2 minutes to this other, right? Timing, stopwatch, everything. And I tried to replicate that particular roast many times and I could never do it. No other batch tasted like that. So I thought, okay, if we're going to roast coffee, if we're going to have a company that does this, then we're going to need not a grill, but we're going to need a computer-aided roasting system to roast coffee perfectly every time, because it takes 2 years to learn how to roast coffee. And why is that a problem? Because these guys are only in Koinonia House for 9 months. And if we're employing them at their place, we're always training and never producing something that somebody's going to come back and give us money for over and over, right? That's what we needed. Repeatability and consistency, that sort of thing, which you can't get if the human is in control. Okay, so we eliminate the 2 years by having a coffee roasting system that roasts for you. Let's go get one. Scoured the internet, and there was not a thing that existed like that in 2006. Did not exist. I am really feeling that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Figure this problem out, roast coffee, employ men and women who have been to prison. If God wants me to do this, there must be a way to do it. And so if there's not a machine on the market that does it, then I guess I have to invent one. And so, I mean, that seems logical, right? If you can't find it, you build it. Now, I had
That's
not
true
ever
entrepreneurship right there. It's like, it's one thing when you're doing it for, capitalist reasons, right? But you were answering a higher call and had even
higher
more,
call. That's exactly
even more
right.
motivation
Yep.
to figure out a solution to make it work.
Yeah. And so I took 2 years and designed, built, used my software understanding, and leveraged friendships in the neighborhood. In fact, one of the neighbors that I was selling coffee to every week had a machine shop with stainless steel welding capabilities and all that kind of stuff. And one day I'm delivering coffee to him and he says, "So, Pete, are you ever going to do anything serious with this coffee roasting?" I'm like, "Drew, It's funny you should ask, because I'm actually thinking about starting a company to employ post-prison people to roast coffee. He said, now that sounds really cool. How can I help? I said, well, you can help me build a roasting machine. How about that? And so he did. And he and I embarked on designing and building. He hired a guy who could write code that a machine would understand. So it's not really computer code. It's production control code. And I taught that guy everything that he needed to know, the programmer, about what a coffee roasting machine should do, the controls it should have. We wrote a math formula that's crazy long, and I'm not a mathematician. But at the end of 2 years, we had something that had not been done before in coffee, a coffee roasting system that was literally 600 times more accurate than anything else on the market, that could roast coffee perfectly, one batch after the next, and make every batch, every variety of coffee roasted differently. So I didn't get into this. If you buy coffee beans from Guatemala, they actually get roasted differently than coffee beans from Colombia or Mexico, or even from a farmer on this side of the valley versus this side of the valley, because the sun shines on this side and not on this side. So the coffee beans are different and they need to be roasted differently. So this is part why it takes 2 years to learn how to roast coffee, right? You have to learn the variances, the vagaries of each variety of coffee, where it's grown, how much moisture it's got, the size of the bean, etc., to be able to roast it so that it tastes it best. So
what year was software.
So between 2006, so 2007 is when Dave and I decided to start the business. And immediately I set about inventing the coffee roasting machine. So it took 2 years. We opened our doors with that machine that you noted correctly, Kurt, the Beanmaster 5000, in 2009, right? So we opened in 2009, and we're in business to employ men and women who have been to prison, like my brother-in-law. We hired our first post-prison employee. His name is James. And James was trying to get work as an auto mechanic. That's what he learned how to do in prison and wanted to do, and he couldn't find work doing it. So he had skills. He did not have referenceable employment. So I hired him as my coffee roaster, and I needed to, because I'm not an engineer. I don't play one on TV, and the machine I put together needed a lot of TLC to keep operating. And James was just the guy to give it that TLC. So he roasted coffee and worked on the machine for me, keeping that thing humming. So that's really how we got started.
Yeah, that's incredible. And if you fast forward to today, how many of these fine folks do you have employed?
Yeah, so we're a tiny little company. I've employed more than 60 post-prison people. We have about 5 at a time. We are a for-profit business, so we have a very strong social mission, and a lot of people think, well, you must be not-for-profit. Nope, we are definitely for-profit. We roast coffee rated in the top 1%, and we employ, and the reason we do that, well, life is too short for bad coffee, but people who get out of prison, they're often seen by society as being in the bottom 1% of society. And that is not true. Everybody, we are all created in God's image, even people who have been to prison, even people who make mistakes and haven't gone to prison, like me or like you, right? We all make mistakes and have done things that we're ashamed of, don't want to talk about, etc. But it's not fair to judge somebody by that mistake for the rest of their life. So in our view, they've done their time, paid for their crime, and it's time to welcome them back to society and let them get on with life, get their feet under them. And so that's what we do. We actively seek out people who have been to prison, who've done their time, paid their time, and employ them. We give them not just a place to work. Lots of places can do that, right? You can push a broom, you can stock a shelf. Here, you're actually producing a product that people who taste it, they stop in their tracks. They're like, this is the best coffee I've ever had. And then they have the thought, and a felon made this? Well, the point there is to elevate the view the public has about felons, that they are not judged by their mistakes, but what are they actually capable of doing? What value do they have that they can contribute to your business, to your neighborhood, to society in general? And we prove that every day with the coffee that we make. So that's why it's top 1% in reality, is because I'm trying to overcome that stigma, that unfair stigma that society puts on people who have been to prison.
And the reason I asked about the number of people is because, when you're talking about having 5, but you've had 60 over time, that's not a lot of churn for the number of years you've been doing this. So tell me about how those employees behave. How might you compare their performance to other people you would have employed in your other businesses?
Right. And so I've employed lots of professional people, programmers, database engineers, network engineers in previous companies I've worked for, jobs that I've had, businesses I've owned. And there is a difference between hiring somebody who's post-prison and somebody who's not. And it's this. I find post-prison people are a lot more eager to work, a lot more eager to prove themselves on the job, much more dedicated in showing up on time, doing more than is asked of them. They are looking for vast majority, are looking for an opportunity to prove that their prison sentence does not define them. And we just give them an opportunity to do that. So it doesn't mean that we haven't had problems with some employees, but I will tell you they're no different than the dozens, hundreds of people, well, maybe not hundreds, dozens of people that I've employed in other jobs that had nothing to do with being post-prison or not. People are people. And there are people who don't want to work in every group. It doesn't matter. Or make a mistake in every group. It also doesn't matter. There's no difference from that standpoint. So, keep this in mind. When I go on vacation, which I'm going to do in August, I'm going to go to Ireland to visit my daughter who lives over there. My entire company, my entire company is in the hands of people who have been to prison. They don't call me. They just run the business, roast great coffee, and get it out the door just like they do when I'm here. People who work here have the same key to the business that I've got. No difference.
I think when we, either in the video that I watched about I Have a Bean, but maybe in one of our conversations, one distinction I thought was insightful was the pride that your employees are getting from making a top 1% product, as opposed to, it's one thing if you're just employing them and they're doing a little job, or maybe you're an average company, but for them to be able to speak with pride that I make something in the top 1% in the country or the world, is that extra element that you think really helps with the transformation.
It clearly does, and you're exactly right, Kurt. When a lot of times when people start working for me, the burden of shame that they carry from the mistake that they made from their past is palpable. Shoulders down, eyes cast down, shuffling their feet, not confident, etc. There's no judgment here. You are who you're living as today, and we just give you an opportunity to show that you're great, that you do care, and that you want to provide great work and care for your job and that sort of thing. And so it doesn't take long working here, and they hear so many times, right? Because we give away coffee all day, every day. Anybody that walks in the door, we've got hot coffee, fresh brewed, and we just give it away. Hundreds of cups a day we give away to the public, because I want them to taste what we're producing. And when they stop in their tracks and say, this is the best coffee I've ever had, and one of my employees can hold out a bag and say, this Ethiopia coffee, it's the best you're ever going to have, and I made it. And the level of confidence, self-confidence, and self-view, their view of themselves changes over time when they are working here, because of the quality of product that they get to produce, that they're part of a team producing. And so we've hired more than 60. They don't get fired or sent away. We're not a program where they're working here for a little bit and then I got to ship them off someplace else. They decide on their own. I am ready to use my auto mechanic skill at a mechanic shop. I'm ready to go do that because I've got confidence now in myself and my skills, or woodworking, metalworking, whatever the talent is that God blessed them with. They get an opportunity to use that skill to make a living and to take pride in who they are and how God made them. So that's the opportunity that we're giving them. Duke, who was in the video that you saw, he's now my plant manager. He's been here for 8 years. And he's my longest term employee. Amy, who was in that video, she was here 8 years. She's was able to move on to a job that she really wanted to do. She didn't really like coffee, which I don't understand. I hired her anyway. And she's working with animals at an animal hospital. So,
I checked the video out. I visited, and everybody listening should go to ihaveabean.com and check out the coffee. But also, there's this video that tells the story of your social mission. And I was in a public place, I was in a hotel lobby watching it, and getting a little embarrassed because I was getting choked up. It's a really compelling story, and I think that's part of what I wanted to get your perspective on. As a person who is in the sort of marketing space, I'm always thinking about, well, how do I tell the world that my client or my customer is where they need to do business? And there's a lot of coffee shops, coffee companies. There's one in every corner. They just, even on my main highway that we drive, I see 2 more like drive-through coffee places have been put in recently. So you've talked about the quality of the coffee. That's one reason people would come back, because it's the best tasting coffee. But there's also this element of what you do, your cause, that I'm sure attracts people to keep coming back. And would you say that's been your experience? So people come mostly because it's the top 1%, or how do you think that kind of weighs into your customers' decision to keep buying from you?
Kurt, that's a great question. And we ask it of our customers all the time. Why do you keep coming back and buying I Have a Bean coffee? And we get both responses nearly equally. It's your mission that keeps me coming back, and your coffee quality. Or they'll say, it was your mission that got me to first try your coffee, but I keep buying it because there's nothing better. So not only do I get great coffee, but I know I'm doing good with my purchase. But if you look at our website, you look at our homepage, you'll notice it doesn't say anything about our mission above the fold. It doesn't do that. And I learned from a guy named Don Miller, who's got a business called Story Brand, and he says this mantra: if you confuse, you lose. I know your company does lots of things. You've got lots of facets, and your grandfather started this business back in 1892, and you've been doing this for 120 years, and all your brothers are in it. And the customer does not care about that. Don't confuse them with that. What you need to decide, what's the one thing that you're selling? That doesn't mean you don't do other things, but what's the primary thing that you're in business to do? And that's what you talk about. So if you look at our homepage, within 3 seconds, you know what we do and you know how to get it. Within 3 seconds, right? It's just roasted coffee for coffee lovers, and order coffee. That's the only thing you can click on. It's one button, order coffee. That's it. Now, not everybody's ready to do that from the one little scene they see, right? So what do? You start scrolling, and then it starts giving you more and more info. You still won't find our mission. It is all about you and what you like about coffee and satisfying that, etc. All the way down in the junk drawer is a link that says second chances. And when you click on that, that's when you're going to see the video, Kurt, that you're talking about. And people will understand. Now, even if they never get there, they order a pound of coffee because we've got a guarantee that's crazy. No one in coffee is doing this. You don't love what you get from us. You don't need to send it back. You don't need to get an RMA number. You don't need to do anything but get on the phone and say, hey, I didn't really like that Columbia coffee. It's like, no problem. We'll give you your money back, or we'll trade you. I tell you what, we'll send you any other coffee that we've got. And we'll keep doing that until you find the one that you think is the best. Not a problem at all. No risk at all. So they get there, they do that. They get that first pound of coffee. And just before that coffee shows up, they get an email. What makes these beans so special? Your coffee's going to be delivered tomorrow. Here's what you didn't know. And there, we're very clear. This is what's going on. This is who's roasting your coffee. This, the quality and the mission. They know right away when that happens. So we've got a really high return rate of customers. We have a growing and solid customer base for that. And mostly what we hear, it's the twofold thing. In fact, people say, even if you had a great mission, and you do, if your coffee wasn't good, we would not come back and keep buying it. You have to have great quality coffee, or we're not going to keep doing it. There's a lot of crappy causal coffee out there. That's an industry term, crappy causal coffee, right? Mostly they think if you have a cause, your product can't be good because you're focused on the cause, not the product. So we're showing people we're focused on the product, because if we don't sell coffee, it doesn't matter what we say our cause is. We can't do it. If we're not making a profit, we cannot do that. So we have to. So that's what we sell.
So one of the things I like listening to you tell about all the different pieces of what you're doing at I Have a Bean is this stack of value that you've got here. So you're buying the top 1%, you've got a special roasting technique to get the absolute highest quality. You've got a cause that people are going to get behind. You've got an amazing guarantee, 100% satisfaction, or you get your money back. You can get your coffee if you're within 10 miles that day, or the next day if you were in that UPS zone. So it's this absolute stack of benefit that you're not getting really when you go anywhere else to buy coffee, right? You don't get that experience. You might get one part of it, right? Maybe there's to your point, there's, our favorite coffee shop in town here is a cause oriented place. That's where we take our business, but they're not shipping coffee same day. I've never quizzed them on it, but I suspect they're not in the top 1%, right?
I'm almost certain they're not.
Right. And so it's that stack, right, that makes it so irresistible. It's 1 + 1 + 1 is probably equaling 12 here, because of how you've stacked them all together. And I think that makes for a really fascinating business. And also, to your point, it makes for a lot of reasons people buy your coffee, and it's not just out of some some affection with your cause. Every part of this process is done right. And so many people, when we talk to people about a cause-oriented brand, to your point, they think that gives them an excuse to skip a step or two. And I do think that you can get loyal customers, but there's also a reason why so many of these cause-driven entrepreneurs aren't sustainable, because in the end, people want good coffee, right? They want a good product.
And they want it good consistently, right? So I think our biggest marketing is word of mouth.
Yeah.
When you're really happy with a company and a product, you've got confidence to tell your neighbor, your coffee-loving neighbor, or whoever it is, right? I don't care what brand it is. You've got to try this because they're going to be satisfied with it, because you love it and you want to be associated with that product and that business. So, and we've worked really hard to figure those things out and build all of those things into the business.
Yeah. Well, I think all of this is really powerful. I thought we have a couple of things I'd like to do at the end. And I thought first I'd give you 90 seconds, maybe a little longer, talk about anything that interests you that's off topic. Maybe it's a hobby.
Off topic.
Now you're
Yep.
now you're not just roasting coffee as a hobby. Maybe you got another thing you're conspiring against, or maybe there's an issue or something you're just passionate about that's happening in your life that you'd just like to share with our audience.
So, outside of business, what's occupying my time right now? I will tell you, I have a lot of fun playing the bass guitar.
Oh.
I play bass guitar. Yep. I have been playing bass guitar since I was 16 years old. Most of my playing has been in church, although I've been in jazz bands. I was in a jazz band with my wife. She played the saxophone. So we've just kind of grown up with music. And for as long as I've been playing, so here I am in my 60s, I finally took lessons. I never took lessons. I finally took some lessons and am getting much better. If I would have done this when I was 18, I could have been somebody.
Yeah, but then who'd be roasting the world's finest coffee if you were out?
That's exactly
I
right.
think you're somebody right now, Pete.
If you were out shredding for a living, you'd be.
That's right. Yeah, exactly right. Victor Wooten or, Carol Kay or Marcus Miller or John Entwistle or any number of people. But I've had a lot of fun relearning to play the bass and just having a lot of fun with music that I grew up with, playing along with that. I'll just go to YouTube and just start to say, okay, play some music. And I'll figure out what key it's in and, what chord progression it is and that kind of stuff. So in fact, I'm turning my basement into a little studio. My wife has not called me any names for that yet. But,
yet.
Put that to your
sure
face.
It's coming. That's right. That's exactly right. Oh, man.
Well, and I also wanted to, I know specifically you've got something going on right now, like an online ordering discount, but I also thought this is your chance. Give us a 60-second concise pitch for I Have a Bean. For those who are going to listen to just the smallest smidgen, what do you want them to know? Okay,
here you go. So while our purpose is to change the perception that the public has about the value of people who've been to prison, people who've earned their release from prison, we operate differently than you might expect. We're not raising funds for a worthy project. We're not seeking a donation in exchange for a trinket or a ticket to a dinner. We're not trying to pull on your heartstrings to get you to give us your hard-earned money because of our awesome mission. Rather, we are hyper-focused on providing the best coffee you've ever experienced. Because of our purpose, we will not compromise on quality. We can't. Our coffee isn't cheap. We don't make any excuses about that. We're confident in the astounding quality of our coffee, but we realize that some may remain skeptical. I don't know who, but somebody might. Unlike nearly everyone else in coffee, our guarantee eliminates all the hassle and all the risk. You could be part of the team that changes people's lives by a couple of pounds of coffee from ihaveabean.com. And for you skeptics, I'll make it even easier. I'm going to give our audience a one-time, one-use discount code that will get you 15% off all the coffee you can fit in your shopping cart on your first order at our website at ihaveabean.com. What's the code? Well, it's got to be Liberty 24.
Yeah.
So LIBERTY 24. Use that and you'll get 15% off coffee rated in the top 1%.
Well, I'll probably be the first one to use it. So I'm excited you're offering it. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. And, for those of you who want to learn more, definitely visit ihaveabean.com and use the code Liberty24 at your checkout. You could also sign up for the Coffee Coach by texting coffee to 66866 and get on the text message list for I Have a Bean. I probably desperately need a coffee coach, so I'll be doing that right after we get off the show.
I'll be your coffee coach. I mean, it's a weekly newsletter, and all I do is teach you how to be better at coffee at home. That's it.
Oh, well, there. I
It's a lot
need
of fun.
that. I need that because I'm a lazy Keurig guy.
Oh no.
So if I'm going to buy, I have a bean coffee, I got to use a real machine. I've got a Ninja coffee machine at home, so I know I'm capable. I'm just going to have to learn.
Okay, 66866, right? Do that, and you're gonna get instruction every week on how to be better at coffee at home.
I will do it.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And Pete, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for listening to that call. You know, so many of us can appreciate feeling like, oh, somebody should do something about that. And for me, that is a big takeaway, is that somebody can be us. We don't have to look to a church or another organization. We can do that by deciding to be resourceful, to ask around, and just look to see where God's moving and where other people are being tapped on their shoulder as well. So thank you for what you're doing. It's inspiring, and I hope it'll encourage other people to do the same.
Awesome. Thank you. Great idea.
And for our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We invite you to join the Liberty Partnership community at libertyspenders.com. There you can learn more about how you can engage with this amazing audience, and also engage with our Liberty Access Multiplier AI tool. You can experience a special AI version of Kurt and Kristen. It'll ask you some questions about your business and give you some tips on how you can succeed in this marketplace. So check out libertyspenders.com. And again, thanks for listening. Until next time.